Hey guys, here we go. Today, we are starting a series filled with stories that history quietly left in the drawer labeled, Sounds Right, so no need to check. When a rumor survives long enough, it evolves into truth without ever undergoing a scientific audit. Humans believe fast. Facts usually stand outside waiting for someone to invite them in. This series has one job. We examine these familiar beliefs to see how long they endure when compared to real evidence. If you like lighthearted myth busting without pop quizzes afterward, feel free to subscribe. No pressure, no commitment. Now for the first one, a myth that lived longer than the empire that accidentally inspired it. 1. The horned helmet. The Vikings never wore. In humanity's collective imagination, Vikings are giant bearded warriors wearing helmets with horns, as if they stopped a reindeer on the road and stole its decorations. The image is so iconic that if real Vikings returned today, their first question would be who approved this costume design for us? Archaeology is brutally honest. No Viking wore horned helmets in battle, not one. Zero artifacts. Their helmets were smooth, practical, and had nothing that made them look like mobile TV antennas. The entire horned helmet idea walked out of an opera stage in 1876. The costume designer wanted extra flair, so he added horns. The audience loved it, and before historians could clear their throats, the public voted this look as the official Viking uniform. The problem is that battlefields are not theaters. Charging into a fight with horns on your head is like attaching handles to your skull and hoping your enemy politely ignores them. But the image worked too well for posters and movies, so the world kept it permanently. 2. Cleopatra and the beauty title. History made up for her. Cleopatra is often presented as the ultimate standard of beauty, a legend so polished that Hollywood treated it as fact, and the rest of the world nodded along because why not? But history never attached a brochure confirming any of this. The myth started with movies. When you cast Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra, audiences naturally assume the real woman looked like a cinematic goddess. Yet archaeological evidence, like the coins with her portrait, tells a different story. Strong features, a powerful nose, the face of someone used to making big decisions, not someone preparing for a magazine cover shoot. What ancient historians actually agreed on was something entirely different. Cleopatra was extraordinarily intelligent. She spoke multiple languages, negotiated like it was a personal sport, and ran political strategy with the precision of a grand master. Her influence came from brilliance and persuasion, not supernatural beauty crafted by film directors. But the legendary beauty story spread faster than the truth. People always find it easier to believe in a perfect face than in a terrifyingly capable mind, even though the mind was exactly what made Cleopatra one of the most powerful figures in Egyptian history. 3. Diamonds and the classiest scam of the century. Some things are expensive because they're rare, and some things are expensive because someone told a really good story. Diamonds fall into the second category, and that category is always more entertaining because it proves humans will pay a premium for a slogan. The truth is, diamonds are not rare at all. Earth has plenty. So much, in fact, that the industry has to limit supply so no one gets suspicious. In the early 20th century, De Beers gathered almost every diamond it could find and released them slowly, like concert tickets. Not because diamonds were scarce, but because the feeling of scarcity was. The real masterstroke came from the ad campaign. The slogan, "A diamond is forever," appeared and instantly turned a hard mineral into the symbol of eternal love. There was no scientific discovery behind that message, just a sharp copywriter and a world ready to get emotional. From that moment on, proposing without a diamond ring was considered a romantic underperformance. No one questioned it. People simply accepted that diamonds were valuable because, of course, they are. Meanwhile, the entire value sat comfortably on a chair labeled marketing. 4. Napoleon and the most famous height misunderstanding in history. If there is one historical figure misunderstood for the smallest reason imaginable, it is Napoleon. He did not fall because of strategy, ambition, or diplomacy, but because of a simple measurement conversion error. A tragedy any student who has ever converted meters to feet can relate to. In reality, Napoleon stood around 1.9 meters tall, completely average for a Frenchman of his era. Not short, not tiny, not small, but dangerous. But the British used a different measuring system and desperately needed a story to mock their rival. From one mistranslated number, the world gained a historical meme. The image of a short Napoleon spread so quickly that it became his personal brand. Everywhere he went, people imagined him as if he marched into battle wearing a name tag that said height limited. No one asked about his strategy. Everyone asked which row he stood in for group photos. The irony is that this misunderstanding became more enduring than many of Napoleon's victories, a rumor that outlived empires simply because it sounded funnier than the truth. 5. Newton and the apple with a public relations career. Some stories sound so reasonable that people stop bothering to check them, like the idea that Newton discovered gravity because an apple fell on his head. A moment that is equal parts pain and enlightenment, perfect for textbooks that want physics to feel like a fairy tale with fruit props. Reality is far less dramatic. Newton was not ambushed by an apple. He simply watched one fall to the ground and wondered why it went straight down instead of drifting toward the neighbor's yard. He used his brain, not a helmet. The apple hit him story appeared much later, created by people trying to make science easier to digest. They wanted a universal eureka moment, and the apple was the perfect visual mascot for classrooms. One look and you instantly know something is falling, or at least failing. The problem is that the story is too easy to retell, so it survived longer than Newton's actual research. His breakthrough came from asking the right question, not from sitting in the wrong spot in the garden. 6. Columbus and the most overcredited discovery in history. If history had an award for achievement given to the wrong person, Columbus would be a top nominee. He's celebrated as the man who discovered America, even though, when he arrived, indigenous people had already been living there long enough to offer him a guided tour. To make things even funnier, the Vikings had reached North America roughly 500 years earlier. They built settlements, left structures, and left evidence. Columbus only left behind a metaphorical sign that said New Discovery, as if no one was home when he knocked. And the best twist? Columbus wasn't even trying to find America. He was aiming for Asia and simply went the wrong way. It's the historical equivalent of heading to the grocery store, getting lost, walking into a coffee shop, and declaring, I discovered this place. So why does the myth survive? Convenience. America needed a symbolic hero, and Columbus fit the marketing brief. The truth didn't stand a chance against a tidy, teachable story that fits perfectly into children's coloring books. 7. The Eiffel Tower in its nobody wanted to be friends era. Today, the Eiffel Tower is a celebrity. Everyone recognizes it, everyone photographs it, and Paris practically uses it as a logo. But if you traveled back to the year it was finished and asked Parisians what they thought, you would get a passionate answer. Tear it down. Dozens of artists signed petitions claiming the tower looked like a stretched-out street lamp skeleton. They believed it ruined the Paris skyline and made the city look like it had accidentally installed a giant construction scaffold. Some critics even joked that the only good thing about dining inside the Eiffel Tower was that it was the one place in Paris where you didn't have to look at it. A subtle insult, delivered with perfect efficiency. So what changed? Not the tower. The people. With time, the Eiffel Tower went from public enemy to national treasure, the kind of glow-up usually reserved for background characters who become fan favorites simply by sticking around long enough. Today, people love it so fiercely that criticizing it feels like admitting you don't understand art. But on opening day, it was treated like an oversized decorative prop no one remembers ordering. 8. The bull in the color red that got wrongfully accused. Some figures in history never did anything wrong, yet still took the blame. Bulls belong in that category. They have been accused of hating red for centuries, even though their vision sees the color red about as clearly as you see a weak Wi-Fi signal. You know it is there, but you cannot tell anything about it. In reality, bulls do not care about color. They care about movement. In bullfighting, the red cape is only a stage prop. What actually provokes the bull is the matador waving it around like he is trying to say, step in and find out. Use a blue cape, a yellow cape, or a polka dot one, and the result is identical. The bull will still charge because the only thing it recognizes is something moving directly in its face. Red was chosen simply because it hides blood and looks dramatic. It is an artistic choice, not a psychological truth. But people enjoy believing bulls hate red because the story is clean, memorable, and dramatic. The mistake is not the bulls. The mistake is in the human brain, where a beautiful story wins every time over a simple fact. 9. Porcupines and the quill shooting technology. Nature never invented. If animals had a list of skills humans mistakenly believe they possess, porcupines would sit proudly at the top. Many people think porcupines can fire their quills like a personal air-powered weapon, a feature that fits cartoons perfectly but has nothing to do with biological reality. Porcupines do not shoot quills. They do not launch them. They do not switch to long-range attack mode. Their quills simply rise when threatened and detach only if something touches them, which means you have to run into the porcupine to get hit. It is a completely passive defense system that somehow got promoted to mid-range weapon status. The misunderstanding began when people saw predators covered in quills and assumed the porcupine fired them. No one considered the far more realistic explanation. The predator charged first. It is like seeing someone with glitter stuck to their clothes and concluding they possess area of effect glitter projection. In truth, porcupines do not need any ranged abilities. They just need to stand still and trust their built-in power to annoy anything that gets too close. Yet somehow, they became the public imagination's buggy prototype of a biological machine gun. 10. Absinthe and the hallucinogenic drink title born from freeform marketing. In the world of alcoholic drinks, few beverages have been mythologized as intensely as absinthe. It is often described as a mystical spirit that unlocks creativity, summons artistic inspiration, and rewards persistence with visions. A rumor that makes absinthe sound like a collaboration between bartenders and dream manufacturers. The truth is far less magical. Absinthe does not cause hallucinations. It does not create visions. It does not switch anyone into an enhanced poet mode. The thujoni in absinthe has mild effects, but you would pass out long before your body ever considered generating anything supernatural. So how did the myth survive for so long? Credit goes to a counterattack from the French wine industry in the early 20th century. They were losing sales, watched absinthe rise, and decided to spread the idea that people drinking that stuff are seeing things. The public accepted it instantly because a mysterious story is always more entertaining than an ingredient list. And that is how absinthe went from a strong liquor to a cultural icon, even though its entire vision-inducing reputation lives only in collective imagination and in the marketing budget of its competitors. 11. The Salem witches and the burned at the stake. Ending that never happened. When people think of Salem, they often picture witches tied to stakes, flames rising, and villagers nodding in grim approval as justice unfolds. It's an image straight out of a horror film, and completely incorrect. During the Salem witch trials of 1692, no one was burned. Not a single person, not one case, not even an exception. The most common punishment was hanging, with one man pressed to death under stones for refusing to enter a plea. But burning at the stake was never on the Puritan court's menu. Europeans of the era did burn accused witches, but Salem, the most famous witch hunt of all, did not. A plot twist Hollywood simply chose to ignore. So why does everyone believe they were burned? Because the image fits our collective imagination of a dark age. It's simple, dramatic, and looks far better on a movie poster than a group of people debating legal procedure. The result is a version of Salem covered in smoke and flames that never existed, while the real history gets overshadowed by the more cinematic version. 12. The Great Wall and the Visible from Space. Title, it never asked for. In the competition for most aggressively exaggerated landmark, the Great Wall of China wins without effort. People love saying you can see it from the moon, as if astronauts only need to glance down and spot a giant human-made highlight marker stretched across Asia. It sounds reasonable until you remember the wall is long, but only about 20 meters wide. From orbit, it blends into the landscape like a single strand of hair on a football field. Astronauts have confirmed they can see many things, but the Great Wall is not on the list. Given the choice between spotting a wide highway or a thin line crossing a continent, the human eye does what it always does, picks the obvious one. The myth began long before space travel existed and spread because it sounded like national bragging rights. Who wouldn't want a monument so impressive it shows up from the moon? A great story always outrun the truth. In the end, the wall became the victim of free PR, even though it never signed up for a NASA catalog appearance. 13. The human brain and the 10% myth that survived everything. In the world of science myths, the idea that humans use only 10% of their brains is a celebrity. People repeat it so often, you would think the remaining 90% is on permanent coffee break inside your skull. Real neuroscience is far less theatrical. MRI scans show that nearly the entire brain is active throughout the day. Every region has a job. None of them takes collective vacations. Your brain runs like a packed city, not an abandoned housing project. The myth started when motivational speakers talked about unlocking human potential, and audiences misinterpreted it as literal brain capacity. Hollywood adopted it next, creating characters who become geniuses by activating the remaining 90% before lunch. It is far more thrilling than the reality that your brain has been fully operational since the moment you woke up. The funniest part is that the myth survives because it comforts people. It suggests everyone has a hidden genius waiting to be activated. A nice idea with only one problem. It is not true. 14. Goldfish and the 3-second memory. They never agreed to. Among all unfairly slandered animals, goldfish sit at the top. People claim they remember things for only 3 seconds, as if their minds run on a constant auto-refresh. If this were true, Peru, every time a goldfish swam past a rock, it would experience a moment of discovery. Science is much less comedic. Studies show goldfish can remember things for months. They recognize colors, patterns, and even the person who feeds them. If you stand in front of the tank and make a fool of yourself, it will remember. Silently. Judging you. So why does the myth live on? Because 3 seconds matches the goldfish vibe. Slow swimming, big eyes, a face that looks like it just forgot its password. Humans see that and jump to easy conclusions without consulting the fish. In reality, goldfish are not forgetful. They simply do not care about performing tricks to meet human expectations. Their indifference is exactly what makes them a perfect symbol of being misunderstood. 15. St. Patrick and the snake banishing story without any snakes. If there were an award for most dramatic religious achievement, the tale of St. Patrick driving snakes out of Ireland would be a finalist. People imagine him chasing serpents across hills, leading a reptile evacuation off the island. It is a heroic image, except for one issue. Ireland never had snakes to begin with. Post-Ice Age geography kept snakes from migrating to the island. No venomous snakes, no harmless snakes, not even a tourist snake passing through. Ireland essentially said no reptiles allowed without issuing a formal policy. So where did the story come from? From metaphor. The snakes represented pagan beliefs that Patrick worked to replace with Christianity. But the symbol spread so effectively that people forgot it was symbolic. Generations grew up thinking he fought a literal reptile crisis that every historian has failed to find evidence for. The myth survives because it is irresistible. A single man banishing every snake from an entire island sounds far more cinematic than the real story of community building and religious teaching. 16. Lemmings and the mass suicide. Myth they never asked for. In the Grand Museum of Misunderstood Animals, lemmings get their own wing. Not because of anything they actually do, but because people believe they sprint in groups and leap off cliffs like a rodent cult rehearsal. It is a rumor that makes these tiny creatures sound more dramatic than an award-winning tragedy. The truth is far less cinematic. Lemmings do not commit suicide. They migrate seasonally and sometimes run into dangerous terrain, but there is no group pact involved. The myth exploded after a 1958 Disney documentary. The film crew never found strange lemming behavior, so they created their own demo by herding lemmings off a slope to finish the shoot on time. Audiences believed it instantly. No one imagined a nature film would get creative that way. A stage scene became accepted as a biological fact, and lemmings were forever branded as the most despairing animals on Earth. In reality, they just want to eat, run, and live in peace. History simply handed them a script none of them agreed to perform. 17. The Middle Ages and the flat Earth belief they never held. If there were an award for history's most successful false rumor, it would go to the idea that medieval Europeans believed the Earth was flat. The myth is so widespread, you would think they spent their lives terrified of walking too far and falling off the world like characters glitching out of a video game. The truth is the opposite. Medieval scholars read Aristotle, observed Earth's shadow during lunar eclipses, and understood perfectly well that our planet is a sphere. No one claimed the world was a plate. No maps showed an edge. Europeans of that era were confused about many things, but the shape of the Earth was not one of them. So where did the rumor come from? From 19th century writers who wanted to make the Middle Ages look ignorant so their own era would seem enlightened. A historical PR strategy is as straightforward as it sounds. And Columbus was not the hero who proved Earth is round. He simply miscalculated its size and happened to bump into an entire continent. 18 Marie Antoinette and the cake quote she never said. Some famous lines become so iconic that people assume they must be true, even when the person in question was nowhere near the scene. They have no bread. Let them eat cake is the champion of all misattributed quotes. It is sharp, cruel, and conveniently perfect for turning Marie Antoinette into a symbol of detached luxury. One problem: she never said it. The line first appeared in a book written when Marie Antoinette was still a child. The author described an unnamed aristocratic woman, and future generations simply assigned the quote to the queen, almost like casting her as the villain without holding auditions. France at the time needed someone to blame for the economic collapse, and this line fit the political mood perfectly. It was simple, memorable, and made her look like she had never seen a real bakery. Marie Antoinette had political flaws, but heartless pastry commentary was not one of them. It was a script added after the fact because it sounded right for the role. 19. Ancient Rome and the vomiting room that never existed. Among the strangest myths about ancient Rome, the most persistent is the idea that Romans built a special room for diners to vomit in before returning to the feast, as if banquets were athletic events with halftime breaks. Vomitorium certainly sounds like the right name, which is why almost no one questioned it. The entire story is a linguistic misunderstanding. A vomitorium was not a vomiting chamber. No architect designed a room solely to help wealthy Romans lighten their stomachs between courses. In Roman architecture, a vomitorium was simply an exit passage in a theater or stadium, built so crowds could pour out quickly. The word described the movement of people, not the digestive system of emperors. There is no historical record of Romans eating until they sprinted to a secret room and then returned for round two. If such a thing existed, historians would have devoted entire conferences to it. So why did the myth spread? Because it fits the public imagination of Roman excess too perfectly. A sensational story always outruns an architectural diagram. The result is a normal stadium exit being miscast for centuries as a luxury vomit lounge no Roman ever requested. 20. Galileo and the burned at the stake. Ending that never happened. Ask a random group how Galileo's life ended, and someone will confidently say, he was burned for saying the Earth moves around the sun. It sounds heroic. It sounds tragic. It sounds perfect for a movie trailer. There's just one small issue. Galileo was not burned. He was not executed. He wasn't even tossed into a damp dungeon. The real ending is much less flammable. Yes, he was tried for contradicting church doctrine, but his official punishment was house arrest, a sentence modern people call working from home, which honestly fits a scientist's lifestyle better than any prison. He spent the rest of his life in a comfortable villa, writing, researching, and debating by letter. The only thing burning was his passion for physics. So why does the burned alive myth refuse to die? Because it's dramatic. People love the idea of a genius punished for telling the truth. It's neat, cinematic, and far more exciting than an old man wasn't allowed to go outside. Galileo wasn't a martyr of fire. He was a victim of Hollywood imagination. 21. Columbus and the title of the man who proved Earth is round, that he never applied for. If history handed out job titles by convenience, Columbus would be the poster child. Entire generations grew up believing he proved the Earth is round, like humanity spent 1,500 years afraid of falling off the edge, like characters walking out of a glitchy video game. Reality is far less dramatic. People knew Earth was round for millennia before Columbus. Aristotle, Arab astronomers, medieval scholars, they all agreed. The debate wasn't about shape, it was about the size. Columbus believed Earth was much smaller than it actually is. He thought sailing west would take him straight to Asia. Scholars objected not because they feared he'd drop off the map, but because his math looked like a rushed homework assignment. He set sail, missed Asia by an entire ocean, stumbled into the Americas, and somehow got promoted to the guy who proved Earth is round, simply because the simplified version of the story sounded cleaner. A classic historical clerical error where the world remembered the plot twist but forgot the spreadsheet. 22. The pyramids and the built by slaves. Myth. They never signed up for. In popular imagination, the pyramids were built by swarms of slaves under a scorching sun while overseers cracked whips dramatically off screen. A great cinematic image, just not archaeological reality. Excavated tombs near the pyramids show the workers were skilled laborers, paid, fed well, and given medical care. No civilization builds an honored burial site for slaves. Egyptians took enormous pride in state projects, and pride requires professionals, not a random crowd forced to show up. Records show these workers ate bread, meat, and beer and worked in rotating shifts. They were basically the ancient equivalent of key infrastructure employees, not extras in a historical misery film. So why did the myth spread? Because Hollywood loves the theme great empires built on suffering. It's simple, emotional, and marketable, even when it doesn't match the evidence. In the end, slaves got credited for a monument they never appeared on the payroll for. 23. Samurai and the one wrong move equals suicide. Legend. Movies portray samurai as men who treat seppuku like a reset button. Fail a task, lose a duel, make awkward eye contact, and boom, time for the sword. It looks intense. It looks honorable. It's also wildly inaccurate. Seppuku existed, yes, but it was rare, formal, and reserved for extreme circumstances among high-ranking warriors. Samurai did not live a lifestyle where a minor mistake sent them straight to the afterlife. If they did, feudal Japan would have run out of employees by lunchtime. Most samurai handled failure by doing something far more realistic. They kept living. They served another lord, negotiated, redeemed themselves, or retired from politics. Honor wasn't a switch. It was a long-term project with room for repair. So why does the myth dominate? Because Hollywood loves tragedy. A dramatic self-sacrifice scene sells better than samurai fills out transfer paperwork. A solemn ritual got turned into a personality trait of an entire class. 24. Roman soldiers and the built-in six-pack armor. They didn't wear into battle. Thanks to movies, many people imagine Roman soldiers marching into combat wearing perfectly sculpted metal abs, like the whole empire had a sponsorship deal with a gym. Great visuals, zero accuracy. Real Roman soldiers wore lorica segmentata or chainmail. Practical, flexible, repairable. No abs included. The muscle cuirass with heroic six-pack design was usually reserved for high-ranking officers or ceremonial use. Its purpose wasn't to say, I work out. It was to say, I have authority. Regular soldiers needed durable gear, not runway armor. Nobody wants to fight in something that turns every sword strike into a very expensive dent in your fake abs. So why does the myth survive? Because it looks fantastic on screen. An army of identical chiseled torsos sells the fantasy better than functional metal plates. History cared about protection. Hollywood cared about aesthetics. Guess which one people remember? 25. Humans and the myth of living with dinosaurs, injected by movies. If you grew up on movies, you probably thought humans and dinosaurs lived side by side, chasing each other, yelling at each other, and occasionally sharing the same wide shot. Pop culture loves combining two dramatic things into one era, like adding random toppings to a dish that was already salty enough. Science does not support Hollywood. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years before humans showed up. The time gap is so large that if Earth were a 2-hour movie, dinosaurs exit around the 80-minute mark while humans appear in the last second. They did not even meet in the casting hallway. So where did the myth come from? Some misread ancient drawings, some folklore, and especially movies that love showing cavemen swinging clubs at velociraptors like they were rivals from birth. The truth is simple. If a real dinosaur ever met a modern human, one side would be amazed, and the other side would stop being amazed very quickly. But the myth survives because it is more fun than admitting 65 million years went by without anyone meeting anyone. 26. Ancient people in the misread. Statistic that everyone died at 30. One of the most popular misconceptions about history is the idea that people only lived to 30. Say that out loud, and it sounds like ancient humans blew out their 29th birthday candles while drafting their final goodbyes. Reality was never that tragic. That 30 number is an average lifespan dragged down by extremely high infant mortality. If a child did not survive the first year, the statistic tanked like dropping a stone into the chart. But if you made it past age 5, reaching 60 or 70 was completely normal. Ancient people did not vanish at 30. They worked, raised families, fought, wrote, argued with neighbors, and complained about life for decades afterward. So why did the myth spread? Because it is shocking, short, and easy to repeat. People only lived to 30 sounds cleaner than explaining population data, mortality rates, and medical conditions. The result is a whole era misremembered as a place where every 29th birthday felt like a farewell tour. 27. Zebras and the camouflage stripes. Theory that sounds cooler than the truth. Zebras wear the wildest pajamas on Earth, so humans immediately invented a dramatic reason: camouflage. A theory that sounds logical until you imagine a lion standing 5 meters away asking, "Where did the horse go?" But the African savanna is not a cartoon. Black and white stripes do not blend into tan grass. From a distance, a zebra herd looks exactly like a zebra herd. There is no invisibility mode. If this were camouflage, it would still be in beta. So, what are the stripes for? New research shows they help repel biting insects, especially tsetse flies that spread disease and torment livestock. Flies have trouble landing on high contrast patterns. In simple terms, stripes confuse the bugs. Stripes also help with temperature control, herd recognition, and distracting predators when zebras run in groups. But the camouflage theory survives because it sounds cinematic, while the real answer is basically zebras annoy flies on purpose. 28. The Mona Lisa and the myth that Da Vinci painted it in one sitting. People love imagining Leonardo da Vinci sitting down one afternoon, dipping his brush, taking a sip of coffee, and completing the Mona Lisa in one burst of genius. One session, one adjustment, done. The truth is the opposite. Da Vinci tweaked the Mona Lisa for years. He returned to it again and again, the way perfectionists revisit drafts they cannot stop editing. Some scholars think he worked on it until the end of his life and never considered it finished. Science confirms multiple layers beneath the final painting. Alternate sketches, changed backgrounds, updated proportions, refined shading. If the painting had a version history, the Louvre would need an extra wing to display it. So why do people believe it was painted once? Because the idea of a genius creating a masterpiece in a single stroke sounds romantic, much easier to share than the story of an artist wrestling with micromillimeter details. Classic Da Vinci. Even the Mona Lisa's smile is a beta feature updated many times. 29. Greek Roman statues and the pure white. Aesthetic invented by time. Walk into any museum, and you will see bright, white Greek and Roman statues. It is easy to assume ancient people loved minimalist aesthetics and lived in a world designed like a luxury showroom. Reality says otherwise. Ancient statues were painted in bold colors, hair tinted, robes outlined, skin polished, eyes darkened. If restored correctly, they would look like festival performances, not marble smoothies. But after thousands of years, the paint flaked off, leaving clean stone. Humanity looked at the leftovers and concluded they liked white. In the 18th and 19th centuries, scholars even resisted evidence of color. To them, white marble symbolized classical beauty. So a misunderstanding became an art standard, while the original statues were far more vibrant than any movie poster. The result? We praise Greece and Rome for minimalism when they were actually decorating statues like cultural event organizers. Charity, Banzai charges, and the myth of suicidal attacks, invented by movies. If you rely on movies, you might think Banzai charges were planned madness. Japanese soldiers screaming, sprinting into machine gun fire as if that was the strategy. Cinematic, dramatic, and completely misleading. In real war, no commander starts with, "Let us all run to our deaths." Banzai charges happened only when units were out of ammunition, surrounded, and certain they could not hold their position. The choice then was grim: stay and be crushed by artillery, or gather everything left for one desperate attempt to break the encirclement. Soldiers did not see it as stupidity, they saw it as the last path to maybe survive. But movies hate complexity. A mass charge with loud shouts looks more heroic than a dug-in unit making hopeless calculations in a trench. So Hollywood turned a final moment decision into a default tactic. The truth is simple. A Banzai charge was the final breath of a doomed unit, not a scheduled performance.